It is the Air Raid podcast brought to you by VivaTheMatadors.com. I am Ryan. I am off screen, but joining me is Maitland Rutledge and Isaiah Lopez. How's it going, fellas?
It's going good.
Good. This is our technically second video pod, but it's probably the first that's actually going to be broadcast. So it's a lot of new, exciting things for us, new territory. Bear with us, any technical difficulties with Skype or anything like that. We'll do our best to get this all through. I'm going to be talking a little bit about SFA, the game, some press conferences that went on this week. Obviously, going to be talking a lot about Arizona State and the big matchup this weekend. But let's go ahead and get right into it, fellas. We're going to be talking a little bit recapping SFA. And this was an overall good game. 69-17, especially when you look at some of the the struggles we've had in recent years in openers against FCS teams. What were your thoughts, and what did you take away from the game?
Well, I thought it was a great game in terms of that. We came out offensively and we really just took care of business the whole game. Like you pointed out, Ryan, in the last couple of years, Texas Tech has struggled a bit in these home openers against FCS schools. Surprisingly, last year. Only beat Sam Houston State by 2 touchdowns, 59-45. Then the year before that against Central Arkansas, it was a narrow 7-point win where we were down, I believe it was by 9 points, and we had to come back. But yeah, it was great to see. It was great to see the offense back out there. Mahomes looked good. The defense got some turnovers. I loved seeing that, especially with all those questions about how's this defense going to look going into 2016. Yeah, I mean, it got a little bit boring to watch in the end, but at the same time, I love seeing us take care of business against an FCS school in our home opener.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was just really good to see the guys just look loose out there and not really felt like the pressure was on them. And I think a lot of that was the fact that we had a night game for the first time in a year and a half. And another thing was the guys didn't look gassed at all, maybe until the end of the third quarter, fourth quarter, and that was already the secondary unit just playing, doing cleanup duty. And I really think Andre Pipkins and Luke Stice are a really big addition to the defense. I think Andre Pipkins made a lot of plays, and he definitely has already put his contribution towards the defense, and I'm really impressed by the run game. So
I liked seeing the new guys out there as well. Colin Hill as well. Stice, of course, as you pointed out, a new defensive captain, really. Pipkins looked fantastic. I loved his comment about how he loved the atmosphere at the Jones and his fans and everything. I loved hearing that from him, since he's been, used to playing at the big house in Michigan and Ann Arbor. I thought that was pretty nice of him to say.
It was. I was really impressed with how the defense just came out with their energy. They looked like a completely new group. You could tell it from pretty much the first snap. And I think, to your point, Maitland, these guys really looked like, we keep saying it, but Coach Witt really came in and got these guys ready. I think SFA ran 89 plays of offense against us, and we looked pretty good. Held them under 20, and I'll take that any day. If you can hold a team under 20 with this offense, I think we're going to have a very good year. Obviously, Mahomes had a great night, 483 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, rushed for another 2 touchdowns. You had, the defense forced 3 turnovers. Penalties were pretty low. I was pleased with, we didn't have a lot of penalties, something that's plagued this program in the past. I think if there was one thing that we could really take away as a whole is the running game or lack thereof, and Coach kind of talked about he was really kind of SFA took the run away, and we're going to get into it right now. It's a good segue, but I don't remember him worrying about it with DeAndre last year. If they stacked the box, he was still running it, and DeAndre was still picking up yards. Obviously, it was a different offensive line as a group. It was DeAndre. So I don't know if that has more to do with there's still some uncertainty in the running back stable. There's still some uncertainty with the O-line, or if he just really wanted to get the plethora of wide receivers touches. But I think that's one thing that was the only thing that was lacking in that SFA game. But he did make some comments after halftime, or at halftime, after the game, and on his Monday presser, Maitland, and that was that he was really not pleased with the effort coming from the second group there in the second half.
Yeah, that was very true. I think he said something along the lines of they didn't play up to our standards. Just talking about how played kind of sloppy. I mean, really did. I mean, Shimanek went in there in the third quarter. He started out pretty shaky, threw an interception early. He only had 150 yards for the game, for the rest of the game in terms of passing. The running game, we didn't really establish it, so Felton and White didn't really show much. Dolphin got into the end zone. That was good to see, considering the rumors that we heard about him struggling to pick up the system, but he had scored the last touchdown of the game. Yeah, second string. Honestly, I agree with Cliff. They did look a little bit sloppy. Just wasn't that great of a performance. I think I heard something else, him talk about this on Outside the Huddle with Robert Giovanetti. He said that they need to be, those guys need to get better at being gamers, not just being good practice players. Because you can look good in camp and you can look good, going against your own guys, but it's another deal when you get in the games and you gotta show the coaches something. The bottom line is, I mean, I really didn't see anything from the second string in this game that really made me jump out of my seat like I did when the first string was out there.
Yeah, Isaiah, he was also talking about the offense's toughness. I don't know if he was. He mentioned kind of the inside wide receivers and to the offensive line to a certain extent, which is also very interesting, knowing how much they worked on toughness, both physically and mentally. What did you take away from those comments?
I think he's just trying to solidify like the whole point of practice and really, I mean, you're buying into this brand with this team, and I think on that he's just, like I said, I don't know, just try to. He's still selling this team even after one game, so I think that's what he's trying to do with those comments. But yeah, I mean that's my thought on that.
Yeah, it's a valid point, especially with how many players that he has and how many recruits he's trying to bring in. And there's only a limited number of positions at any one time, and there's only a limited number of snaps in the game. So I guess he's trying to continue that competition feel into week 2, making sure people solidify. I mean, the sad thing to me is that that's kind of carried over from last year. Last year he was talking a lot about the outside wide receivers struggling with their blocking, struggling with some other things in the toughness area, winning those one-on-one matchups, and here we are again talking about it again.
Yeah.
Something else that he mentioned, which is interesting for us, I won't mention any names, but we tended to compare, especially last year, Davis Webb and Patrick Mahomes, and they're two different styles of quarterbacking. You had the traditional pocket passer, and you had the dual threat in Patrick Mahomes. And one thing that Patrick was good at was extending the play, something that Kingsbury always said he wanted in a quarterback, someone who could extend the play when the play broke down or the pocket broke down, instead of taking a sack or forcing a throw, which had been kind of Webb's MO because of his lack of mobility. And now, interestingly enough, he kind of mentioned that he needed to clean up the street ball, just going out there and improvising, which is what Mahomes does really, really well. We've been talking at length about how, for this type of offense, although extending the play is good, there were multiple times last year with Mahomes where he did not execute the offense. He may have eventually gotten the right result, but he was missing wide open receivers, not getting through his progressions really well. If the first guy wasn't there, he'd pull it down and start trying to escape the pocket, whether or not the pressure was there or not. So it's interesting to me that we have in one sentence or 1 year, he's talking about wanting to extend the play. This time he's trying to reel him in and make him a little bit more of executing that offense. Is this more of a I want the best of both worlds? Is he trying to still kind of groom and build Mahomes into a possibly NFL prospect, or or does he not know what he wants? Type of thing. Is he, why not just let Mahomes go out there and do his thing and just say, hey, it's working for us. Go ahead and do it. Why is he so disappointed with the street ball, especially in the red zone?
I mean, I'm gonna have to go with the earlier point. Just that look at the products that, like, Kingsbury has had. Like, Case Keenum was more of a pro style quarterback, and you didn't see him scramble a lot. And if you even look at the numbers, like, you'll notice that he didn't scramble a lot. But then you have like Johnny Manziel, who, I mean, eventually did get drafted, and I mean, he won the Heisman and stuff. And so I think what Kingsbury wants is that balance to not only make Mahomes the best player he can, because in those broken plays, like, he just does, it's magic. Honestly, the guy is a wizard when it comes to a broken play or escaping the pocket. And but I think for Cliff, it's more of a like, hey, let's keep you in the pocket. Let's see you, go through your progressions. Let's see you, keep your eyes downfield, and maybe we can, raise that draft stock and really get your name out there, and not just, oh well, he's your Cam Newton, sort of deal, like, just runs, and he can still, beat you,
Mm-hmm.
with the arm. But I really think it's more of, no, we just want you to be the best you can be, and also just really, get those scouts to notice Mahomes be on his feet, or his ability to extend a play, just something that's, you know he can, keep his eyes downfield, sees a receiver, boom, like, stays in the pocket, hits that receiver. And that's something uncharacteristic right now, um, to an extent. But I think, yeah, I think he's just trying to really groom him into a better quarterback than just, you know beat you on the run, and all that sort of deal.
So Maitland, to that point,
Mm-hmm.
we've seen how Kingsbury's dealt with a dual threat quarterback who's had a lot of success in Johnny Manziel, who, he won a Heisman as a freshman, set all kinds of records. Was a big deal. And one thing that everybody commented on about how Manziel's game wouldn't translate to the NFL was his ability to just run around and then throw it up in a triple coverage and just a big guy come down with it. Is this him learning from the how he didn't have time with Johnny Manziel? It was only a 1 year thing before he went to Tech, and understanding that if he really wants these guys to go on to the NFL, that he's got to make changes and make sure they have the best of both worlds, learning from the way that Manziel has struggled and kind of ultimately failed in the NFL.
Well, I think Cliff does. Well, I agree with Isaiah on a lot of points. I think Cliff really just wants Pat to be the best he can be. I don't blame him for, telling Pat, you got to stay in that pocket a little bit more. And it's not always about, being the hero, so to speak, running around, making all kinds of crazy plays. Although, I mean, I've always loved Mahomes' ability to extend the play. I mean, when he came in 2014 to replace Webb, I thought that, I had a feeling that this kid's gonna do something special. He may or may not be the guy, but I was like, hey, have him go out there, because he extends the plays, especially when, so many times. I mean, a lot of times the offensive line, it just seems to break down. I mean, they can't hold their blocks forever. But I think he just wants Mahomes to be the best QB that he can be, because he can throw and he can run. Pretty. I mean, he can throw very well and he can run the football very well. I mean, I've heard all through last season Johnny Manziel esque, this, that, in terms of what Cliff did with him. And, you brought up Case Keenum. He was a pocket guy. Um, I think he just wants Mahomes to be the best he can be. And, NFL scouts, if they're really serious about looking at Mahomes, they need to think, hey, is this guy going to be like one of those, you know, wing it QBs that's just gonna run and throw the football when and make bad decisions when the coverage breaks down, or is he going to be able to occasionally sit in that pocket and go through your reads and progression and find the guy open. That's what you know that's what good NFL prospects have looked like in the past. So I think that's just what Cliff wants for Pat, and he knows Pat has great talent, great ability. He just wants to get the best out of him while he's here.
Good points all the way around. And while we wait for Kingsbury, during practice to sort all this out before the big game with Arizona State, let's take a look at Arizona State. They defeated Northern Arizona in their first game of the season, and the score looks good, but stats tell a different story. The Sun Devils gave up 425 yards of total offense. Case Cookus was 23 of 33 for 369 yards.
Wow.
One touchdown, no interceptions. And not just that, but when you look at the guys he was throwing to, Elijah Marks, 8 receptions, 174 yards receiving. And Emmanuel Butler, 7 catches for 118 yards. And I'm just sitting there going, okay, what Arizona State team is this? Is this a just kind of a jittery, we're just going out there, getting the first one off of our belt because we're kind of looking ahead to Tech as well? Or is this kind of a Texas Tech 2014 opener which signaled major issues as the season went on?
I think it may have been some jitters. I mean, anytime you come out as a team, there's always going to be some jitters for your first game, whether you're supposed to win or not. I definitely looked at the stats from that game. Opposing team quarterback, 369 yards through the air. This defense gave up, over 400 yards in their opener to an FCS school. Arizona State's defense, it just seemed like they didn't really, they're probably still trying to maybe find themselves a little bit. I mean, this isn't the same Arizona State defense that we faced in the Holiday Bowl where they had guys like Davin Coleman and other good players that they had who are now trying to make it into the NFL. So yeah, I mean, I think Arizona State just had some jitters. The score doesn't, and you're right, Ryan, the score doesn't really indicate that, this was a blowout. It indicates that when, Northern Arizona got into the end zone, or when they just made some plays down the field, they just couldn't execute sometimes. They couldn't capitalize in the red zone, it seemed like. And who knows? They may have been thinking about, hey, let's go ahead and get our opener out of the way so we can get ready for revenge against Texas Tech. Who knows?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean it's sort of hard to determine what kind of ASU team we're gonna get Saturday night. And a lot of people always say, well, Texas Tech beat so and so team last year, and so that's going to be the same result we're going to get. And I think that's a lot of comparisons like that are always when we play OU or UT. Like look at the history of that series. Like OU dominates, so therefore they're going to dominate this year. And I mean, to an extent, yeah, history, patterns, and all that, like statistics, obviously, they matter. But with this ASU team, you have, a true freshman starting as quarterback, and then you have a couple of guys that they lost to a targeting call, and then you lost a guy to injury, and, they're still, that guy is still probable to play Saturday night. And so it's hard to really say that, Texas Tech might blow them out like they did in 2013 when they had – the Coleman and Taylor Kelly, and
oh yeah.
So, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I really think Texas Tech is just gonna pass all night. I mean, I think they gave up almost 400 yards. ASU did, and so that's a gaping hole. That's a gaping weakness. That I think Cliff and Mahomes are gonna really try to exploit. And then if you look at Case Cookus, the NAU guy, I mean, 369 yards, and that's against, the Arizona State team that we're supposed to be playing.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and so
no matter who you are, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know how Northern Arizona fares in their conference, but I mean, like Ryan said, like any quarterback. Like that's a good night,
Yeah.
you know.
That's not a bad day at the office.
I
No,
think
definitely
if
not.
Mahomes repeats that line,
Mm.
maybe not just the one touchdown, maybe if he had 3 touchdown passes, he'd be being praised, Big 12 Player of the Week, Offensive
Mhm.
Player of the Week right there. So, yeah, I don't know. This is kind of an enigma. I don't know if they were just getting their feet wet or not. Even some of their offensive numbers are a little low. I know they had a little bit more total offense. I think it was 470 something yards of total offense. But when you look at Manny Wilkins, 20 of 27, 180 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick, and he was 14 for 89 rushing. Those aren't stellar numbers out of your quarterback play. I know he's a freshman,
Right.
and some of their other guys that we're going to talk to in a minute. And it's a good segue. Let's just go ahead and do it. Let's talk about Manny Williams because that's what we do here. So, let's talk about Manny Williams. This guy came in, kind of took camp by storm, from what I understand, and won the job outright. Dual threat guy. Didn't have again his first big time appearance. He did okay. He reminds me a lot of like a Josh Freeman. He's this big, lanky, not overly fast, just hard to bring down in space when he actually does take off and run with it. He's got a decent arm. His decision making maybe leaves a little bit to be desired, but he's an enigma too. We don't have a whole lot of film on him to really gauge what kind of player Manny Wilkins is.
Yeah, I mean, this is like you said, this is a freshman quarterback. Started his first game, won the job, and he just, like you said, only 180 yards through the air, 89 on the ground. He's definitely a dual threat quarterback. There's no question about it. Football, you get 89 yards. I think he had a rushing touchdown too.
He did.
Yeah, but Wilkins, he's definitely a player that Tech needs to keep their eyes on, especially because this defense struggles to stop the run, and a
Especially
lot of
against
times,
dual threat quarterbacks, they have
yes,
trouble.
yeah, I was just about
They
to bring
crash
that
too
up.
hard. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, Wilkins is definitely that guy. Tech has struggled with scrambling dual threat quarterbacks. Yeah, he's definitely somebody they got to keep their eyes on. Hopefully Gibbs is saying, hey, watch out for this kid. He may not have put up impressive numbers, but he has that ability to, tuck that football away and gain 10 yards when y'all are all looking at the running in the backfield and the receivers. But yeah, Wilkins. I mean, he won his first game. That's always good when you're a freshman QB to go out there and win it.
Mm-hmm.
He might have especially had some jitters. That being his first game, like ASU, looked like they were a little bit still trying to find themselves, at least in their opening game. So yeah, but I'm interested to see what Texas Tech, how they can handle this dual threat QB.
Mm-hmm. Uh, and it's not just Manny Wilkins. They have an actually really good running back, Demario Richard,
Mm-hmm.
who he reminds me a lot of Kenny Williams. He's not overly fast, but he searches out contact. He will, if you're in his way, more than juke you, he will try to run over you, which is interesting. Um, he went 19. He went 19 yards. I'm sorry, 19 attempts for 78 yards, 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
But this guy is kind of scary because he's going to take 3 or 4 guys to bring down. What do you have on him, Isaiah?
I mean, Kenny Williams was, I mean, he was knocking heads when he was in Lubbock, and so in that case, I think a lot of the strategy against this ASU team is going to be just packing that box, and it might pay off when Richards is going to be when they hand off the ball to Richards. But my only my concern is if they use him as a decoy for Manny Wilkins to really just take off in those plays where he has some room. So, but I think with the guys that we have, like Luke Stice, Colin Hill, like I think they're gonna be able to hold him. I mean, his numbers are okay. Like he had a long of 17, which isn't really scary. It's not like, oh man, this guy can break out for big runs like Leonard Fournette per se. But um, I think as long as we just pack that box and really get some guys on him, I think we should be fine. I mean that's going to be one of the really keys to beating his ASU is to really hold um, the run game, and that's going to be for almost any team that we play going on in the season. So
Well, if you stack the box and you bring seven, obviously 8 guys in, you're leaving a lot of one-on-one matchups on the outside. And one of the guys that is going to, get a lot of attention from whether it be Thierry Guima or Tevin Madison, even Deshaun Johnson over the top, is Tim White. He's their big-time returning wide receiver. He went 9 receptions for 95 yards. He did not have a touchdown, obviously, but he is big. He is lanky. He is long, and he's not a burner, but he reminds you a little bit of, like a Josh Doxson who's just fat.
Boy.
But he's not a burner though. He's not. I'll outrun you. He's just good in space. I think he's a little deceptively fast with how long his strides are, but. He's a return threat, as we're seeing in the highlight video. So he's got a lot that brings to this game that, in all 3 phases, you're looking at a dual threat in Manny Wilkins, a big-time rusher who likes contact that's going to take 3 or 4 guys to bring down, so you got to crowd the box. And then you have someone who can beat you in space, a go-to wide receiver. And those 3 alone can cause trouble for, or at least in the past, in recent history, for Texas Tech's defense. So, there's a lot going on here that David Gibbs secondary, especially if we're, keeping the, loading the box, that we're going to have to be on top of. But I think out of the 3 of those, Tim White really is the one that bothers me the most because he's really good in space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. White is a great looking receiver. He's got size, lanky, like a Josh Doxson. Guys like that. That can develop great ball skills, great catching skills. NFL scouts are going to come knocking on your door at some point if you get that much recognition, especially when you're in a conference like the Pac-12 with the USC's and UCLA's in there. Yeah, I mean this is definitely. I mean, Texas Tech. In my opinion, Stephen F. Austin really was not a challenge at all. This is Tech's first real challenge of the season, and it only happens in week 2. So it's going to be big for David Gibbs to get this defense ready to go. In my opinion, this is really the defense's first chance since last season to prove that they can hold their own against a team that has basically a triple threat of player types that they've struggled to deal with. Dual threat quarterback, powerful running back in Rashard, and you got White, the best returning receiver on the team. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but I think David Gibbs will get him fired up. And they had some confidence getting some turnovers, and they did stop the run against SFA, but then again, they're going to be facing a tougher team. But yeah, I think Gibbs will have this defense fired up and ready to go, ready to play hard.
How great would it be if we could, just trust Pipkins and Fehoko to plug the middle so that we didn't have to bring an extra defender down and just have that. I think that would be phenomenal. I don't think we're there yet, but I'm already loving Pipkins and his role in the defense.
Mm-hmm.
So Isaiah, some things came out in the Arizona State presser, their weekly presser, that caught a lot of Tech fans. I don't know about surprise, but it definitely caught them off guard. And I know we were talking about it in Slack. There's a lot of talk about it on Twitter, and it was with regards to some comments, unflattering comments or backhanded compliment comments from some Arizona staff or Arizona State staff to about the Texas Tech program. What do you have on that?
So yeah, not offhand, but it was either the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. Pretty much said that Texas Tech has the tendency of hiring the biggest guys they get or recruiting the biggest guys they can get and just teaching them how to back up, 2 or 3 steps. And you can see as how that could be taken wrong. I know as looking at some of the comments after an Arizona reporter was tweeting out these quotes, and a Tech fan was like, well, he's not really bashing the program or bashing our O-line. And it's like, I mean, it's kind of hard to interpret that that message across, that media. But it definitely sounds like there's some malice to that comment of, saying, well, all they're good at is just showing these big guys how to really um, shine a block by just teaching them how to take 3 steps back, and that really just tarnishes the credibility to the coaching staff at Tech.
I think it's a bashing of the system overall. It's not just Texas Tech; it's a bashing of the system. I think we heard a little bit about it from Brett Bielema in Arkansas last year with the bulletin board material of, if you don't use a fullback, you're basically worthless as a coach in a program. And Kingsbury took offense. He's like, we don't need a fullback. And it sounds, it was not just on the O-line, but it was like speed of play, it was tempo, it was a couple of things, and it just sounded like it was a shot on the type of offense that they're not playing real football, they're playing with smoke and mirrors almost.
It's almost ironic because an interesting stat is that Arizona State faced 3 teams last year that ran this air raid type of style or form of the air raid, and that was like Washington State, West Virginia, and I want to say UCLA or something. And they lost all 3 of those games, and so it's like you kind of have to be careful on what you say and realize like the struggles you've had against this type of formation and this type of system that Texas Tech is going to be obviously showcasing on Saturday. So. Yep. And it's just like, hopefully you make him eat his words. But also it's just something that, Cliff is going to put on that bulletin board. Same thing with the Brett Bielema comments and even Charlie Strong during Spring Ball.
Yeah, talking about how they're going to run over the Big 12, and Cliff said it's not April Fool's anymore, is it?
Yeah.
And but Maitland, they also said something about how their defense was specifically designed to stop Texas Tech's style of offense. And when we just heard Isaiah talk about they lost all 3 games when they faced an air raid style, do we really sit there and say, okay, yeah, your whole defense is really designed to stop our offense? Because that's not been the case in the past.
Well, if they're talking about stopping, the air raid offense that we run, and they weren't able to do that last year against, like Isaiah mentioned, Washington State and other teams in the conference that ran that offense. It just, it's all just about, trying to get under your skin, things like that, bulletin board material, that whole other side to the game in the locker rooms and whatnot. I mean, if anything, Cliff's just gonna say, hey, this is what they've been saying this week. Let's just go out there and prove them wrong. And last year, they did it. When Brett Bielema from Arkansas made those comments, and took care of business up there in Fayetteville, and sure enough, Cliff fired back the next day, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's they haven't. To say that well, first of all, I don't think it's a good thing to say that you've built a specific defense to stop one style of offense, because you're going to be facing a lot of different types of offenses year in and year out. There's, other teams in the Pac-12 that aren't always going to be running the air raid. There's teams, Oregon is, option this, option that. That's completely different. So you got to look at, in your mind thinking about, hey, we're not just going to be facing the air raid all season. We need to do this. I do think though, that's not really what they're thinking. We're just going to do this. We're just like we like have this one specific defense. I think they're kind of just saying that maybe just to get the thought in Tech's mind that they have all the answers. But, when it all happens out on the field, you never know. And then again, I think it's just more bulletin board material for Cliff to use as motivation to get these guys fired up and ready to go on Saturday.
Yeah, and in the past, I've always been like, Cliff doesn't use that. He doesn't need it. The team doesn't need it. But, those little jabs at the style of play that you do, or your program of what you've been trying to set up is kind of, you take it personally, and I can see how that may factor in. I think there was just a lot of, I don't know what was going on in that Arizona State presser. They were trying to be polite about it, but at the same time, they were kind of, we're too, almost like, we're kind of too good to concern ourselves with this gimmicky offense. But having said that, let's depart the bulletin board material a little bit, and let's get to the keys of the game. And we each have one. They're different. They don't all combine into, one big master game plan. It's just what we think the keys of the game are going to be. And first of all, we've got Maitland's, and that is to establish the run game.
Mine is just to establish the run game, just better. I was kind of thinking a little bit back in the first game that they didn't really need it, just because the offense and Mahomes came out firing on all cylinders. SFA, when they would try to run the football, SFA really did a good job of, keeping Texas Tech in check. Overall, we only had Texas Tech only had 125 yards rushing in the game. They were all by all sorts of different people, from Mahomes to all four running backs that got a touch on last Saturday night. I do think that they need to. I do think they need to at least try to establish the running game, because I feel like that Stockton and White and Felton, that stable of running backs can do some special things. They're all different, but they have But I believe they have all have great abilities. They have great skills. I really just would like to see an offense that, if they need to, ground and pound a little bit, if it's 3rd and 1, 2nd and 1, get under this, line it up and,
put Fehoko at fullback and let him just run over somebody.
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't mind them trying that at all. That'd be very interesting. Be like William Refrigerator Perry back in the day.
Yeah, Warren Sapp for the millennials out there.
Oh,
that's still too old for millennials, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I've seen some other NFL guys like Damana Pecco from Cincinnati being as a fullback occasionally and every now and then. But yeah, I just like to see more of a running game, just because I know Washington's gone. I don't think any of these backs can replace him, completely, but it's still good to have a running game, and you got, a solid stable of running backs to do that and take a little bit of the pressure off Mahomes, just a little bit of the pressure. Run it, ground and pound if you have to when you get down in the red zone, or, classic, line up. And if you can get sort of the running game going, a lot of times, Tech last season, they get the passing game going, honestly, and when they get down near the goal line, or maybe they've been running the football a little bit on the drive, Mahomes will do sort of, a naked bootleg, just run it out and just run into the end zone, and nobody's within 20 yards of him.
Yeah.
Plays like that can, establishing the run can at least put the thought in ASU's mind, like, okay, it's not going to be all about them just passing the football on us and trying to get in the end zone. They can run between the tackles too.
Well, it was interesting. It's interesting you say that, Maitland, because when you look at the SFA game, there were several early attempts, and I'll go ahead and put up the highlights. There were several early attempts that were basically play action, and they hadn't established the run. And you would think against a better team that they're just going to ignore the play action if you haven't established the run. They're going to sit there and say, okay, you haven't run it on us at all, so why would we even pay attention to that little 2 second in the backfield when we know you're going to pass it? So, yeah, I agree that I'd like to see a little bit more, and really one of the biggest things I've ever heard from an offensive lineman is they love the run game, because when you're in a pass-happy offense, you're the one that's getting pounded on the entire game. And with the running game, you get to pound on the D-line a little bit. And that's got to make you light up a little bit if you're offensive lineman to sit there and say, okay, just go out and knock the end off, as it were. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
But Isaiah has a different key in mind. Isaiah, you want to air that mother out?
Always do. I mean, look at Case Cookus. He threw 369 yards. I imagine he was in it longer than Mahomes was. Mahomes was in it practically 2 quarters and 1 drive at the beginning of the 3rd quarter, and he threw for 483. He was number 2 leading passer, I think, at the end of the weekend, and that says a lot, saying he was only in for half the game. And that just says a lot about the Arizona State secondary. I think I don't want to say they're exposed because it's the first season, and yeah, NAU had a good game, but there's definitely something to exploit in that sense that NAU threw the ball a lot, and although the score isn't as close as it indicates, but they definitely were in the game for a while, and for Case Cookus to have the game that he did against the Arizona State secondary, that just says a lot about what Mahomes can do against the secondary. And another thing is, I just want to showcase the receivers more. I think we saw Derek Willis catch maybe 2-3 passes.
Yeah.
And I want to see him. I want to see him go off. I mean, he's had a lot of hype behind him.
The leading receiver in the Tech game was Jonathan Giles. I think he had 4.
Yeah, he definitely had a break.
And everybody else had 2.
89 yards.
Yeah, everybody else had like 2 receptions. Obviously, we spread the ball out a lot, but someone like Willis, like you were saying, even Dylan Cantrell, you want to get these guys the ball as much as possible. So.
Yeah, definitely. And in showcasing those receivers, Giles is the youngest guy, probably in that group, and so for him to have the biggest night of them all really says, or it's just a testament to the depth that we have at receiver. And so I'm really excited to see Mahomes really just spread the ball, spread the love when it comes to passing it around. So, we want Giles to have a big game. We want Derek Willis to really shine in his first season as a Red Raider. And then you have Ian Sadler and Reggie. So it's just going to be interesting to see who Mahomes targets, but I really do think that Mahomes is going to just really air that ball out just because of what Case Cookus did against Arizona State. And it almost seemed like Arizona State really didn't have an answer to stopping that air attack. So
I will say one thing I noticed in the first game with SFA is there didn't seem to be a concern with wide receiver drops like there had been in the past. It seemed to be
very little of it.
It was very much old school. I say old school. We're talking about mid 2000s Texas Tech, where you really weren't concerned about a drop pass. You knew if there was anywhere near them, they jump ball or whatever, they were going to go up and they were going to get it and they'd bring it down. So you never really concerned about, it was 3rd and 13 and the ball's in the air. Oh, are they going to catch it? It was like, okay, he's open, he's got it.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the big knocks on Jakeem Grant was he tended to, drop the ball, and then in previous years we had this issue with drops, and they were like, well, we're using the tennis ball machine and we're doing all the other stuff, but I didn't really feel like that was an issue. I think everybody was pretty on point with their catches, except Sadler above his head, which I think if he tried to catch that with one hand, he would have brought it down because he's really good at that. But it's a good point, Isaiah. It's really good. I guess that brings me to my key of the game, and that is win the trenches. I think with this O-line and with this D-line, we have to maintain the line of scrimmage in our favor at all times. And if it's O-line, it's really kind of stopping what you would expect to be, as far as advantage. The Arizona State defense, front 7 is probably an advantage to them over our O-line, so we really need our O-line to kind of mesh together and give Mahomes time to go through those progressions, time to execute that offense, because I don't think we can take another LSU thrashing of our style thrashing of our offensive line.
I don't want to see that ever again.
I mean, nothing against Alfredo Morales, but when I saw him get thrown to the side with one arm, the defensive tackle just threw him to the side with one arm. I was like, ouch. So not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying with a younger, less experienced, not as well meshed offensive line against a traditionally good front seven, that is at least a possibility. We need the O-line to step up there. And then second, you need obviously this revamped D-line with Colin Hill, Pipkins, Fehoko, Zach Barnes, whether it's Jakarthi Mack or Gary Moore, whoever it is, to really, that front four needs to really stay in their gaps, allow the linebackers to come up, stop the run so that you don't have to bring in someone from the secondary to help stop the run. Because I know I would bet anything on this that they're going to try and do a lot of read option, hand it off to Richard, really try to get him going and wear down the front seven, and then as we pull people up, beat us over the top, just textbook football 101. And if we shut down the run early, they're going to have to abandon it, and that's what we need to do. So that's my key to the game. Does anybody else have any keys that we didn't get to just off the top of your head?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, let's go to a close. I know this is the point where in the future we're going to take a look at around the Big 12. We'll kind of preview some big 12 games, maybe recap what happened in the previous week. We can do that a little bit. I don't have any prompts for it on the video side of things. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about rankings. People are up in arms about rankings, especially with Texas moving up into the top 15, just outside of the top 10. And just random things like that. And it's always funny to me that people get so amped up about these rankings, especially now in the age of the college football playoff, because that's what this was all supposed to be about. Back in the day, back in the 90s, with the AP poll being the way it is, people said, okay, the rankings are too subjective. People at the papers or whatever, sports writers, they're too subjective about what's going on from week to week. We need an objective, completely taken out of the equation. We need someone who can just look at it and decide. And then that's how the BCS came about. And it was the first time ever that 1 and 2 actually played in the national championship. I don't know if anybody remembers, but back in the day, the national championship was actually number 1 versus number 3. And number 2 versus number 4 was in the secondary bowl. So you had, for instance, you had like Auburn when they went undefeated, and they won the Sugar Bowl. They were actually like number 2 in the country, but they, I take that back. They didn't get a part of the national championship is what I'm talking about. But there was always like number 1 versus number 3 instead of number 1 versus number 2. And then the BCS came in. It was computers, took a lot of the subjectivity out of it. So they're saying, like OU, who would lose early in the season, they're saying, oh, but we're playing better than anybody now at the end of the season. We need to be in there because, we want to see the best teams, not just the best, season or who's having the best season or whatever. So back comes the college football playoff. We get rid of the objective BCS computers that were too cold and they couldn't take into account changes in the season and what all is going on. And now we're back to it's too subjective. So it tells me that us as fans have no idea what we want. We're going to complain about anything anyway.
Yeah.
And
Really
and if that's the way it's going to be, we just need to go back to the objective and just not have any subjective rankings because people's emotions get involved. And, man, that's when you put Texas at number 11.
Very true.
That was a good point. Very good point.
Sorry for my rant. But Really quick before we go, Isaiah, you were talking in pre-pod about Arizona State having a special like remembrance. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's throughout the entire game or if it's pre-game. But what is Arizona State doing, and who are they honoring?
Gotcha. They brought out, or they tweeted out this, uni combo, and it was going to be primarily black, and I think it's to commemorate some 1996 game. I'm not exactly sure. I just know that the ties are in '96, and I believe that's probably the first game we played them that year. I'm probably wrong.
No,
I'm not
we
sure.
played them in the 50s, I think.
Gotcha. Never mind then. There we go.
I think.
Um,
I wasn't
yeah.
alive then,
So
so I don't know.
yeah. But yeah, they're gonna be wearing special uniforms. I know from looking at the pictures initially, the pitchforks on the helmets are gonna be black, and I think gloves are gonna be black. I think pants might be white. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look at them again. But they're definitely pulling out something special for this 2013 rematch, if you will. And so it really begs the question: is if Texas Tech will pull something out, because as you know, in prior years we had the first throwback uniform against Arizona when they visited Lubbock, and we had this black on gray, that Zach Thomas era uni, and then the year that we went to Fayetteville, we wore the whites, and I know the whites have really brought us some good luck since eventually later on in the season defeated UT for the first time in Austin since
Yeah, we can't wear those
it's been a
though.
while. Yeah, so
They
no,
already
it
sold those
definitely will
off
be
via
that.
auction.
Yeah, yeah,
We
we
can't
were
wear
talking about
those.
that.
So there's got to be
Um,
something else in the works if that's going to happen.
yeah, I think the other thing that we were speculating in Slack was the fact that was it border conference. We were both in the border conference in the 50s, and so that would be something to bring back a uniform from the 50s, and an initial picture that you can find on Google has sort of a white helmet, red jersey, white pants, with the white pants having
Yeah.
stripes down the side, and even the helmet having the old double T with stars surrounding it, which is definitely something special that I think a lot of Tech fans now wouldn't really be able to like quickly, say like, oh, that was from the 50s. But we'll see on Saturday what the program has up their sleeves.
Yeah, and if anybody out there wants to read that article about the border wars, it was written by Kyle Jacobson. It's on vivathematadors.com. It's a really good piece. I really enjoy it when we bust out some good history and we're actually not just opining. But it's a really good article. I really enjoyed it. So be sure to check that out. Maitland, any closing thoughts?
As far as the uniforms, I don't really know what to expect from Tech. My gut instinct tells me that despite all of the honoring that Arizona State is doing with these uniforms, I think actually the game you're referring to, Isaiah, might have been the 19. I think I read this someplace today. Maybe the 96 or 97 Rose Bowl game or something.
Okay.
I think they won that game that year. I don't think it was. I don't think it was a national championship, but it was a big bowl game, obviously the Rose Bowl. So I
Mm-hmm.
think they're honoring the team that played then. I think one of their team members was Pat Tillman, who
Okay.
played for the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, but anyway, just back to the uniforms. I don't really know, what Texas Tech is going to go. I haven't seen any tweets from the equipment staff. I follow them to see if there's anything popping up there. I think they're gonna. If my gut instinct tells me that Tech will probably go with, white jersey that has the regular red numbers on it,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the black pants and the black helmet. That's just, to me, that's just the kind of basic default away uniform.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, they could go all white, but who knows? All I know
They
is it's
could throw
definitely
the
gonna be
gray
hot.
in there. They did
Yeah,
that against West
I
Virginia. They
mean,
did that against OU in 2013. They
I
did it
don't know.
against TCU in
We put those
2014.
on
There's
last year
always
against West.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's always one away game where they do the gray helmets, gray pants. So you never
this
know.
could work
You
though.
never know. Well,
West Virginia last year
Yeah.
didn't really work that
I
great.
will say that the whiteout is probably the least likely considering that La Tech will be the Celebrate Cotton game, and traditionally it's been the whiteout.
And you don't want to have white helmets versus white helmets if you can help it.
Very true. So I think I might just go with Maitland on this. It might be a default game. I mean, especially with Cliff really fighting complacency in his presser, or in the presser, and so he could be setting the mindset with his uniform, saying it's a business trip, it's nothing else.
That's true.
And in that case, your default away gear is what we're gonna wear, because this is just another game, another away game. So it's really going to be up to them, and it's a game time decision, obviously. So we'll see.
Okay, guys. Well, last thing, predictions. Isaiah, what's your prediction?
I think it'll be a shootout. I hope not, because I want to see Texas Tech just really dominate, especially after the performance against SFA. But I'm gonna say maybe let's go 48. Maybe 48-32.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Maitland, prediction.
Well, I think it is going to be a bit of a shootout. It's going to be close. I'm going to go with 42-35, and in the last few minutes of the game, Mahomes has to drive the team down the field, and we score a touchdown, and our defense has to hold him with maybe a minute or two to go and try to get the win and seal it.
Nice. I actually don't even remember what I said in the beginning. I know I had us, or in our season predictions, I know I had us winning. I think I had us winning by at least a couple of touchdowns. But I could not tell you, because I don't want to contradict myself with having a different score right now. But I will say I had us winning. So that's a good place to end it for our first broadcast video pod. I'd like to thank Fox Sports, ESPN, Pac-12 Network, Big 12 Network, TexasTech.tv for any footage that I may have inadvertently used in the highlights. Just going ahead and throw that out there with the disclaimer. You can watch the game on FS1 at 9 p.m. Central Time. It'll be 7 o'clock, obviously, Pacific Time. So it's a late start.
Yep.
And this was great. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope everybody liked this format. Hopefully we can do more in the future, especially when with the previews. If we missed anything as far as stuff you'd like us to talk on, please let us know in the comments. You can find this on YouTube and hopefully on Twitch. The regular audio podcast will be on iTunes and broadcast through the site as well. Please comment. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, agreed, disagreed, all that good stuff. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again for you. My name is Ryan, and for Isaiah and Maitland, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time, especially for the recap, which will come out on Sunday. Hopefully. It's a late game, so we'll see. But anyway, thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you.
Yeah.